So I feel like the luckiest man in the world because I get to sit across from divinity with anyone I'm with. Anyone. You are the one creating your world. It's you. Stop blaming other people for your creation.
So in my time with you today, I'm going to talk about several things. They may even seem unrelated, but they are all about being. And ever since the book about being, The Ultimate Coach, has come out, we're talking about being a lot. But as you know, there is not one definitive way to be, not one definitive way of being. There's not one universal state of being. There are a lot of states of being. And the ones that I am going to talk about today are the ones that are important to me. They're the ones that I have found valuable in my life. And they may or may not be the ones that you find valuable. But if you don't relate with them, I ask you to look for the underlying principle, because the principles are the same.
When I started coaching with Steve, my life was a mess, in a beautiful way. I mean, it was a crazy mess. I was enjoying lots of it. But I have had a chance to spend time with Amy, and here's what I'll tell you, like simply put. If there's no Amy, there's no Steve. You've heard Steve say that, it is 100% true. If there's no Steve, there's no Karan.
And the doctor left the room for a minute, and my mom looked at me, and she had such deep sadness in her eyes. And she said, "I didn't do very well, did I?" And the doctor came into the room, and he handed her a pencil and a paper, and he asked her to write down a sentence. She wrote, "I have a wonderful life." At this point in her life, she had no memory. She had very little of her mental powers left. She really had very little of her physical powers. This was a woman until into her 80s was climbing the most difficult mountain, climbing Camelback Mountain once a week, but not at this point. But who she was left with, at her core, was her being. And at her being, she was gratitude, she was optimism, and she was that she had a wonderful life. See, being is everything. And being is the key to having a wonderful life.
So we were together up in Scotland at the Edinburgh Castle, and then we went all over the place because she walks everywhere, and I'm worn out. She's half my age, and we go into the forgive me if I butcher a name or say the wrong place or the wrong date. Get the intention of what I'm saying. We go into the Scottish memorial place where everybody from 1918 that died in any of the wars, there's a memorial. Anybody have seen it, what I'm talking about? It's in Scotland. It's there. We're going through it together. I come out and I'm crying. And I say to Amy, why these wars? Why do we kill each other? What are we doing? Why are we doing this? And I'm genuinely just asking my wife, kind of like I just there said, be positive. And she says, it's because people want to take something from someone else. And right on the spot, man, I get these revelations of ideas, like this whole card full of all these. It's just tons of ideas. And I stopped and I said, wow. Taking is the seed of all conflict and war. If I'm taking in a relationship, there will be conflict. Taking as a possibility, not the truth, is the seed of war. So then my mind is just a simple mind. You can see that. Just can't even spell things right or say the right deals. That's me. That's not like, oh, he goofed. That's just me. I said to myself, wow, what if a group of people decided that they were no longer going to be takers from anyone? But what they were going to do is they were going to be givers. So they began saying, oh, this taking is causes conflict, war. I think I'll be a giver. So imagine, and what you have just seen are great examples of it. My wife writing, Alan doing what he did, Eric Lofholm doing what he's done, Judy doing what she's done. They're givers. There's no war on that stage. Oh, there's conflicts of like, can we get the thing done? But those people are all working together. Look at the experience in this room. This is what giving does. As a possibility, taking is the seed of war. I invite you, because I promise you, I am not a taker. I am not a taker. I tell people, you do something with me, you win. You do something with me, you win. I am a giver. I invite you to consider whether you're taking or giving. And if you're taking and you want to reduce something, like you're interested in what's going on in the Ukraine, stop taking. Oh, that's way over there. No, stop taking. Give. Start giving. Be a giver. Make sure you're clear that I'm not saying something else where you think, oh, well, you shouldn't ever take. Yeah, no, you shouldn't ever take, in my opinion. But there's a real difference. By the way, this all came to me up at that little place. I just sit down and write it out. The difference, you want to give, you don't want to take, and receiving is totally different than taking. The state of being that receiving is versus taking. You can receive like crazy, man. Receive. Just don't take. Give. And when it's time, receive. Don't take. Look in your own world. Is this positive? Am I okay? Look in your own world and see, like, where am I having some challenges? You know what you're going to find? Can anybody guess in the math that we just did? Yeah, you're taking something. Stop taking. Start giving.
I've had a few hats on in my life. One of the hats that I wore was as a sound designer. I was the head of sound or a sound engineer at the Sydney Opera House. I got to stand in front of those massive symphony orchestras. I worked for Lloyd Webber. I was a consultant here on West End and Broadway. Did Cats for a long time. But my point here is that when you're in front of a very big, swelling orchestra, you've got the choice on how you listen to that orchestra. And it's confronting, it's visceral. If you're next to the conductor and you've got a 100-piece orchestra playing at 120 decibels, it sounds like a jumbo jet. You can feel it right here inside. And you've got the choice on how you take that music, how you take that sound in. Because you can criticize, or you can judge. You can pick on the cellist at the back, or you can say the brass is too loud, or that timpani is a little bit off. Or you can let the entire wave of music wash over you. And that's what I invite you to do today, is leave out the faces, leave out the who or even the what, and listen underneath that.
Get the acknowledgement when anyone speaks. Now, I look down, I could take 2 hours acknowledging these two people, just those two right there. I could do that for hours. You guys wouldn't like that. So you're going to have to take it whenever it's there. So, now listen to me. I want to acknowledge you. Now you'll be like, oh, he says this is what he says to people. No, I'm talking to you right now. I want to acknowledge you for whatever you did to get here from the first time you did anything. I acknowledge you for buying a book or an Audible or whatever you did, or talk to a friend or somebody gave you a book. I acknowledge you for doing that. I acknowledge you for overcoming your own judgment. You were like, well, this book's about, and started looking about you. I acknowledge you for whatever you did just this morning to get here, to get up, to get ready, to drive. I acknowledge you for the money you paid to come here. There's people in here from Africa. Where's my friend from Africa? Where's he at? Stand up. Just stand up. Now, I'm acknowledging him. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Who lives about 2 blocks from here? Stand up. All of you that live 2 blocks from here. Thank you for what you did to get here this morning. This isn't about distance. It's about being who he needed to be. And you had to do your own thing. So here's what I'm going to say to you, since he just pulled me up like that. Get the most out of this for you. I am not over here for anything for me. I don't need clients. I'm not here to coach coaches. I don't coach coaches. I coach human beings that may end up being a coach or a football player. I could care less if there's another coach on the planet or another artist or another football player. I care about there being human beings. Guess what I'm sitting in front of? I don't care if you coach or you're a pipe player or you work in the restaurant. Can you hear that? Hear that. Now listen for you.
The most visceral effect, or the most extreme example I've heard about this book that I want to call attention to, is the fact that in some cases it saved lives. People have looked at who they are, who they can be, and allowed themselves to bring in a new revision, to upgrade themselves, or to be, through their new way of being, themselves, essentially carve off that marble rather than actually making a change, making a transformation. One of the most material examples of this was a couple that I met in Arizona while I was staying next to Steve at the end of last year. And the couple were the Gilmans, Lindsay and Casey Gilman. They picked me up one night for dinner and said, Alan, we want to tell you something. We were on the verge of wrapping up this marriage. And through reading The Ultimate Coach, just through reading the book, we looked again at what was possible. We looked again at who we were being. And I felt really privileged to be able to have a gift from Lindsay and Casey, which was a symbol, a wooden symbol from their wedding party that to them symbolized this connection. And there are stories like this right the way through the 500 or so people here.
When I had that realization and I started removing these things that were actually creating difficulty in my life, my relationship healed almost overnight. We went from on the verge of separation and looking at others' relationships and wishing we were them, to now feeling like we are them.
Right, but here's what's more important. So I say, fine, got it. Then do this, right? You think you're different because when you get this thing that you think you want, more money, more, better relationship, bigger house, whatever that is, more career success, those things are going to make you feel like, then stop fucking around. Go do it. Don't take 20 years. Don't take 15 years. What are you waiting for? Cut out everything else. Go all in. Take 5. Take 5 years out of your life and say, I'm going to crush this thing out here in the physical world because when I have it, my life will be perfect. Forever. Right? So don't dilute yourself. Don't be armchair quarterbacks like, well, money's not good or money's great. Okay, stop it. But it's not everything. Frankly, it's nothing. It's just an energy field and it doesn't matter. But here's my invitation to you, right? You don't have to listen to anything I say. You have options. So here's my option. A, you say, okay, what this guy say maybe makes sense because he's speaking from a perspective of having been there. Or you say he doesn't know what he's talking about. If it's the latter, here's my challenge to you. Then fuck everything else. Become one-dimensional. Go get that thing. The worst thing you can do is spend 15 years of your life to go get that thing the way I did and realize it's not even the thing you fucking wanted. Whew. Can you feel that? That shit's heavy. Don't do that. Fools learn from their own experiences. Wise people learn from experiences of fools. Yeah. Okay, so
The guy who wrote the book, Giants and Smalls, it's a book about me and him. I was going to Southern California and he said, dude, how are you doing these miracles? Everywhere you go, these miracles show up. And I said, no, they're not miracles. They're states of being. And he says, hey, next time you're going to do one of these, tell me before it happens. And I want to kind of go along with you. I'm giving you this short version. I could take 2 hours to say this, but get the idea and stay with me. Because the next thing I say, well, you got to have this base or you won't hear me. So I called up Nick Smith and I said, hey, I got a long ride home. I have no idea what's going to go on between here and home. But it doesn't matter what goes on here between here and home. I'm going to be happy about it. Just like when we came on this trip, if we had been hijacked, oh gosh, I could say that too, but I wouldn't. The guy we met. Sorry, this is the mind. This is how this mind goes. So I said, Nick, I'm going to just have a great time. And boy, did I know that like 3 miles later on the back of my sports car that doesn't have a spare tire, I don't have a back rear tire. So I'm out in the middle of the desert with my tire messed up on the side of the road. So I call Nick up. Some people would have that and they'd be wherever they're at. I'm going to create this distinction so you can see, just like you go over and answer the door when you're in an argument, you can shift. You can do that with anything in the future. So I called Nick up and I said, Nick, we're going to do one of those miracles. He said, what's going on? I said, my car says my tire's flat. I got out. There's no tire. The kind of car I drive, they don't have them there. They don't have these tires just sitting everywhere. So I'm going to have a tow truck or something. This is going to be fun. He says, what are you going to do? I said, I'm going to have what I call the tow truck distinction. I made it up. And I said, no matter what happens, I'm going to be okay with it. Now, I haven't seen my wife for a week. I'm excited to get home. Now I'm on the side of in the desert. There's no place to go. I got to wait for a tow truck. And so I tell Nick, there's going to be a miracle. And I said, and Nick, you know the book that you wrote? Whoever is going to have to come and get me is going to get that book. And that person's going to go to my house. And I'm going to take a picture of that person with that book with my wife. That's before I even know who's picking me up. So I called the Porsche and I said, hey, I'm out here with a flat tire. And I said, what do I do? And she says, blah, blah, blah. And she said, it'll be this long. And I said, now picture her. She probably gets people with flat tires out somewhere. They don't get their tire in time. They're going to do whatever they do to get their tire in time. I said, so they got to come from Indio. How long does that take? It'll probably be an hour and 10 minutes. I said, excellent. That is so good. She could have had a heart attack. I said, that is so good. Let me tell you what I've got to do. And I tell this lady what I got to do. And then I call Nick back up and I say, they're coming. He says, when? I said, about 70, 80 minutes. You're not pissed? I said, no, I told you this was going to be great. So I got that time. I make some phone calls. She calls back and said, boy, the kind of car you drive, you got to have a different thing on it because you can't put it on or it'll take your scoop out. I said, so what's that mean? He says, it's going to be another 40 minutes. And I said, that is so good. And I'm sure she's over there going, this guy must be the guy who can't remember somebody's last name or what the name of his book is. And I said, yeah, that's great. So I did some more stuff. And then she called back to tell me what was going to go on. And so I said to her, hey, do you know who's going to pick me up? And she said, most people don't ask who the tow truck driver is. I said, yeah, I want to know. She says, why? I said, why don't you get a message to him? She said, well, it's a him. His name's Mike. I said, good. Would you please tell Mike? Now picture this gal takes these phone calls. Nobody's doing this stuff. And nobody's going to get the result I got, but anybody could. This isn't special to me. So if you're thinking that, disappear that. You could do what I'm talking about today out there in the foyer or anywhere. And so she says, yeah, his name's Mike. I said, here's what I want you to tell Mike. I don't know who Mike is. Mike's going to show up. Like, I don't know who some of you are. And when I saw you, you know what? I love you. This is cool. Let's go. So that's a tow truck driver in this. This is going to be great no matter how this goes. So I said, get this message to Mike. Tell Mike he's going to pick up a guy. He's going to have more fun with this guy than he's ever had, and I have a gift for him. And she says, you want me to tell the tow truck driver that? I said, yeah. Tell Mike that. So I'm waiting. Mike pulls up. Mike's Native American, probably about 26 years old, pretty good sized guy. And the first thing I do is I say, Mike, I am so glad to see you. Man, you know how to operate that thing. I wouldn't know how to get that on that in a million years. Thank you. Hey, do you mind if I take a picture across the street? Because I'm going to document all this because you and I are going to have this unbelievable experience. And that dude is looking at me like, who the hell is this guy? Well, who's that dude? That's wild. So he's loading up my car. I get in the truck with him. I'm giving you the short version. I get in the truck. I'm serious. I get in the front with him, and I pull in, and it's like, he looks at me like that. He turns the radio on. It's heavy metal, and I think it's like, that dude ain't talking to me. We got 2 hours together. So I got this dude in here, a Native American. This guy looks like the grandfather to him, and I say, hey, Mike, what are you listening to? He looks at me like I'm crazy. He says, it's heavy metal. I said, who's playing? We start talking about who's playing. We're just having a conversation. I say, who do you think started heavy metal, Mike? He said, I think it's Ozzy Osbourne. I said, Mike, in 1972, I went to a concert and I saw Ozzy Osbourne. I love the way he pounds it. I love the way the drummer goes and the way he sings. And he said, now we're in this conversation about heavy metal. I asked him, what's your favorite heavy metal group? I don't know much about heavy metal. Now I do. Everybody's my coach. Everybody teaches me. He tells me about what's going on. I'm listening to him. It's like crazy good. And, and I then just tell him what I'm doing in California, what's going on. I tell him about the book. I give him a copy of the book while we're driving. Now, Nick, the guy who wanted to know about the Miracle Head, he says, keep me up to date on the miracles. I said, dude, when you're doing miracles, you can't stop and advertise them out. They just flow. So if you want to know about the miracle, you call me. So I'm in the middle of this heavy metal discussion with Mike, my buddy, I know that his brother died, and we connected on that. And it's like, this is a real guy. He cares, and we're going over heavy metal. Nick calls. So I just take my phone, put it on, and you go the deepest, hardest Metallica there is. It's playing, and it's so loud. And I say, Nick, I told you we're going to have a great time. He says, what in the hell is going on? I said, Nick, let me introduce you to Mike. Mike, this is Nick. He wrote that book I gave you. And we go back and forth like that for 2 hours. He's supposed to drop me off at a Porsche dealership. We are such good friends. I said, you got to go right by my house. Can we pull in there and unload my car? Not the car itself, the stuff that was in it. I'm on a trip. He pulls in there, and I know it's like he's supposed to go there, drop the guy off, and go back. We're there. I take him in. Get Amy. We take a picture. When I had that extra time in the car, I'm calling the guy's a friend of mine, the Porsche dealer. I won't get a tire. He says, drop your car off there. I'll have it fixed. So now I'm going to get Mike to drive somewhere different in my town, not the Porsche dealership, and drop the car off. And he's going to let me video it while he does it. Then the car's off, and he's going to take me back to my house. That's what I call the tow truck distinction. That trip was going to be good no matter what happened. I decided that ahead of time. And get this, you're doing that too. Either that way or that way. You already decided you're going to be pissed off at him. You're playing it out in your mind. But only always. You were pre-playing everything you do. I suggest you do some tow truck driver distinctions. I suggest you call it what it's going to be before it happens, and then have practice at being able to deal with that when it happens, no matter what that is. Now, that gives you a little background. Does everybody kind of get that? That could be a really not a good experience, and somebody could take the 3 weeks saying that was a horrible thing, blah, 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 blah. And I'm taking this guy home, meeting my wife. I got a best friend. By the way, this is all posted on Facebook. I mean, the tip of the iceberg, but you see this guy in my homepage. It's weird. Why's he got that picture of that guy? Because I love that guy. Because he's alive. Because he's human. Because he's divine. Because I'm committed to have a tow truck distinction with the guy. Well, I do the equivalent of tow truck distinctions with lots of stuff. I don't have any more talent than you. You are doing the same thing. It's just, what are you doing it with? Glad she's not here. She wouldn't see this as positive. So I raised my voice. She thinks, I'm getting a little off. Glad she went to Tinkle or whatever. She's not in the room, is she? So tow truck driver distinction as a possibility is deciding how something's going to be before the thing happens. See, listen to what I said. Wait. Deciding who you're going to be is a state of being. It's not a state of doing. I don't have to figure out what am I going to do with this guy when he gets here? Because who I'm being. If I plant blueberries, what am I going to get? Well, if I'm there, like this is going to be a great, exciting thing. What kind of doing am I going to? Great, excited doing. That's like you win. Hey, if I can do it, anybody can. It's simple. You've seen I can She jokes I can multitask. So I'm telling you, whoever's over there going, oh yeah, he can do that. You're already doing it. You practice it every day. But I want you to know this. What you're experiencing is being. This is being. It is so delicious. There's nobody on that little thing that we had is going to go out and kill somebody. They're not even going to want to steal. The state of being. That's the basic state of being, of love that you are, till you start judging you. So we're going to move over to another idea that just came to my mind. And that's this. If there's any one thing I could share, and I could say this about 70 things, so I don't mean it literally. Do you understand that? If there's only one thing I could share, that's what it would be in this moment with this mind. But 3 minutes later, I may have something else. I'm not lying. I'm not deceiving you. There's more than one thing. But this is the one thing I'm talking about now. If you want to alter your life more than anything you've ever done, lighten up on you. Forgive yourself. Stop judging you. Stop judging you. You're the one doing it. And then you think that's how we see you. No, that's how you see you, and then you give that to me. Stop judging you. You reduce the judgment, you increase the love automatically. Stop judging you, you got our world peace. You're at war in you, there is no world peace no matter what's going on in the world. Oh, they ought to do something over there. How about if you do something in here? Become conscious to how much you are judging you. Reduce it. Guess what happens when you begin reducing how much you judge you? Any ideas? You become more loving. When you reduce the judgment on yourself, you cut me some slack. And everybody else you look at.
By show of hands, how many people have an idea in their head about a business they want to create or a project they want to start, that when they think about it, they really get lit up? Practically the whole, like 80% of you. What are you doing about it? What did you do about this morning? When you jumped out of bed, were you fired up? Brand new fucking day. Let's go get it. Yeah? For most of you, no. Just know that. This is not like I'm just bringing awareness. And if you don't have that kind of response where your feet hit the ground and you're like, oh man, I get to do this one more day, at least for today. Tomorrow's not guaranteed. If you're not there, you got to look at it and say why. Why are you deferring? Why haven't you started? Why do you keep coming up with reasons why you can't do it?
Pretend that everything you ever do is because of who you're being. Everything you ever do is because of who you're being. So let's just say I'm being really, really, really loving. If it's true that all doing comes out of being and I'm being loving, what kind of doing would I do? Louder? Loving. And if all doing comes out of being and I'm being an a-hole, what kind of doing do you think I'd do? A-hole doing. You want to just slow it down. It's not complicated. You go to a 70-week course, do this, do that, get being, get some access to your life, take that book, read about yourself, do a process on yourself, sign your own book, write your own vignette, and start being. Because you can't trick it. All doing comes from being. There is no doing that does not come from being. Can you picture an apple coming with, there's no tree, there's just an apple shows up. That's not going to happen. Being is the seed of all doing. Everything. If you're looking there in a relationship or you got some problem over there, ask yourself one question. Guess what the question is? Who am I being? Who am I being? Who am I being? Forget about looking over there. Just ask you, who am I being? Because see, when I'm with my wife, if I'm being an a-hole or I'm being not kind, I know it'd be hard for you to believe I could do that. It happens frequently. What kind of doing am I going to be doing? I'm going to be doing exactly what I'm being. You can't trick it. Simplify your life. Can you hear that? If I take an avocado seed and I plant it, what's my likelihood a pineapple is going to come out of it? 0. If I take a walnut and plant a walnut seed, what's the odds I'm going to get an oak tree? 0. The law of being is as consistent as the law of nature, that seed produces the fruit. If you have 2 blacks or 2 whites or 2 Japanese or 2 anything, and they get together, me and my wife get together, and we have a little yellow child, red child, and whatever child, you're going to be freaking out because the seed's not there. If let's say 2 black people got together and they have a little white dude that looks like me, we got a problem over there because that's the seed's not going to produce the fruit. Being is everything.
Quote, "Be curious, not judgmental," by Walt Whitman. Ask myself why Steve is doing something or saying something instead of making him wrong. Am I going to war in my mind? Where can I be more flexible? Where can I find a third way that works for both of us? And at the end of this, I have this quote by Blake T. Osler. Good and evil can be defined slowly in terms of the law of love. A good act is one that leads to healing a broken relationship or growing in intimacy and meaning in existing relationships. In contrast, an evil act is whatever injures or destroys a relationship or leads to alienation or separation. We know that violating the law of love is a foolish choice to be miserable rather than to experience happiness and joy. And it is utter stupidity of the silliest sort to choose misery when we could choose joy. Now, these statements remind me that the struggles in my marriage are all about my way of being, not Steve's. It reminds me to come from, as far as I'm concerned, the problem is me. Now, I don't mean that like in the sense of someone cowering in the corner and, being abused and not standing up for themselves. I mean it from someone who has gone through the work to transcend ego and transcend blame and transcend being right. And say, if I can just look inward, I can solve anything. If I can come from a state of being, of love and acceptance, and not making the other person wrong.
You cannot outdo who you are being. Just sit with that for a minute. It's so powerful. You cannot outdo who you are being. And I've said another way, man's chief delusion is that there is a cause, any cause, outside of his or her consciousness. Biggest thing. So what does that mean practically? Let's break it down so it's not some esoteric. This is not magical or mystical or spiritual, even though it is all of that. Let's assume that consciousness had a scale, right? And it's a scale of 1 to 10. I'm making this up. This is not true. And let's assume that Steve, he struggles a little bit. He's not the brightest, but he works hard. He's at like a level 5 consciousness, right? 10 being the highest. So when Steve is at a level 5 consciousness, hear this about you, about each of you. The only thing that's accessible to Steve in the physical world, the material world, the spiritual world, the netherworld, is things that are at that level 5 consciousness or below. Steve's desire to have something that sits above his level of consciousness is that. It's a desire. There's a longing for it. There's an anxiety of whether or not I'll get it. When you get those feelings, just know, yes, you're going to have to go out there and do work. That's a given. Anybody who knows me, I'm a big proponent of working. But the work's got to start here. You want that thing that's at level 7, level 8, level 9, peace of mind, being okay with where you are. Abundance, not money, abundance. If that's sitting at level 7, 8, or 9, and you're a level 5 human being, that shit's not accessible to you. It's not. Go to all the courses, do all the work 90 hours a week, 100 hours a week. It is just not, the vibrational match is just not there for you to ever experience it. Like, that's how powerful and profound this is. So we talk about go and work inside. Our jobs in this incarnation, you know, again, I'm not getting religious or even practically philosophical with anyone. The thing you want to experience, it already exists. It already exists at a plane. Your job is to raise your level of consciousness to get to that plane, and then that shit will just magically show up, and you'll be like, where did this come from?
I'm trying to have you see, I don't care what color you are. I don't care what religion you are. I don't care what you believe. I care who you're being. And I want you to get this. Guess who's in charge of your beingness? You are. That's something some of you don't believe. So you think it's out there in your spouse. You think it's out there in somebody else. You want a wake-up call today? You're the one responsible for your beingness. You don't believe me? I'll give you examples that'll blow your mind. It's going to take a little time, but it will blow your mind. And you're the one choosing your being. Never not. It only looks to you like that did that, so I'm like this. I lost that job, I did this. That's who you're being will shift that. I'm not perfect, and most of the time, nothing out there will change what's in here.